You thought those 87,000 IRS agents were for the rich? How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we got to talk about the Biden administration coming after waitresses and waiters' tips in restaurants. That's right. If you are not reporting your tips appropriately, you might get a knock on the door from the federales, from the IRS, like, hey, man, where's your tips? Now, before we get into an article, which I do have in the box below, I'm going to give you the basic rundown of what's happening. Now, what they're going to do is look at the average of what a particular area should bring in for tips by a bunch of data we'll get into in a minute. They're going to look at the average, and then if you fall below that average as far as your tip reporting, you're going to get a call. You might get a knock on the door like, hey, man, where's the tips? You are not reporting enough. You are way off. If the average is X and you're 50% below X, then the question is why. You might not be a great server, but not 50% below. So it might only be about $5,000, maybe at the max $10,000, but that's how they're going to make up the difference in the budget deficit or whatever they got going on. They're trying to tax and spend. They're not going to really get that from the rich because you can only tax them so much. They're already taxed to the max. The majority of taxes in this country are paid by the very small portion of people that make like over $1 billion. You're talking about Elon Musk, Bill Gates, guys like this who are a fraction of 1% pay the majority of all federal income taxes. They pay the majority. They pay the majority of all taxes, period, through different ways. You hear them say little stuff, little dog whistles like, oh, this company didn't pay any federal income tax, but what other taxes did they pay? How much of their actual income is paid out in taxes, even if they don't pay much or any federal income tax? You see what I mean? That's just one tax. That's a normie tax. What about excise tax? What about if they have any properties? They got to pay personal property tax, business property tax. They got to pay for this license and for this certification and for this and for that and for this and for the team of lawyers and accountants and tax professionals and whatnot to make sure they're tax compliant so they don't go to the penitentiary, so they don't get audited. How much does all that cost? That in itself is a tax, in my humble opinion. Okay, so they won't talk about that. They'll just say we're going to tax the rich, but in reality, they're going to tax you. They're going to tax me, regular, everyday normies, middle class, and below. Now, to continue on, they are going to check to see if you are meeting up to the average. And they're going to see if you get money anywhere else. Like what I do, if I go to a restaurant and I don't have cash, I could just sign the ticket and say, okay, I'll give you X amount of money for a tip on a ticket. And then my total will get bumped up to the price I say as far as including the tip. What happens with that is that money gets paid out to the server on their check and it gets taxed. So if I don't want to have that $20 or whatever get taxed, I'll say, hey, what's your Cash App? I'll give them the money directly on their personal Cash App. So it doesn't have to go through the taxation process and they can put it right into their personal pocket. But guess what? Now you have all these fintech apps, your Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, et cetera, Zelle, they all report to the IRS. So if the IRS look at you're not making your average, and when you work like Saturday night, 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock, you're getting a bunch of random cash apps. What's going on there? It seems like this money is not gifts. It's because you render a service. So that's taxable. But if it was a gift, it would not be taxable. Prime example, if I just give a friend of mine $20 on Cash App, the IRS can't tax that. It's a gift. Now you can tax gifts, but not something like that. If your Meemaw sends you $20 in the birthday card in the mail, they're not going to require you to put that as far as income. They're not going to tax that. It's a gift. However, if I gave you $20 after you render a legal service like wait staffing, bartending, whatever it is, that could be considered taxable income. It's the same thing as reporting tips. And if I'm looking at your Cash App and it looks fishy, You're getting a bunch of cash apps, one-offs, people not in your contacts. They can see that as well. They can see if they're in your contacts, by the way. You're not in your contact. There's a bunch of one-off stuff. All right, I'm going to need you to report that. I need you to report it. That's what's going on right now. Now, we have an article. I won't read this entire thing, and of course, it will be in the description. But you see what's going on. Biden's IRS plans to crack down on waiters' tips. Quote, they're coming after waitresses' tips now, tax expert Mike Pollux says. Like I said, they got to pay for these plans some kind of way. You may think, if you're just a normie and don't know a lot about politics, you may think, oh, they're going to tax the rich. They don't pay their fair share. That's what they're going to say. But really, they're going to nickel and dime. Your $500, $1,000 is a lot to you to pay. It's a lot to me to pay. But it's not a lot when you're talking about one individual and compared to the big money players, your Elon Musk and the Bill Gates, who pay billions in taxes. However, once you multiply that $500, $1,000 times 20 million, 100 million, it adds up really quick, doesn't it? But let's keep on moving here. The IRS proposed a revenue procedure this week to crack down on the service industry reporting of tips. The Service Industry Tip Compliance Agreement, it got that whole little thing, right? SITCA program would be a voluntary tip reporting system in which the IRS and service industry companies cooperate, according to the announcement Monday. As part of the proposal, the IRS will give the public until early May to provide feedback on the program before implementing it. Now, I would presume most places are not going to want to do that. They're not going to participate in it because the way the whole thing with wait staffing works is they pay them below minimum wage because they make much more than that when you're talking about the tips. That's the whole attraction to get into the industry. But if they have to start reporting more of the tips, then that becomes less attractive of an industry to get into, or they got to start paying them hourly, and you're going to have fewer people on the floor at a time, fewer wait staff on the floor at a time. That's going to contribute to worse service. Therefore, you're going to have an overall thing that makes the entire restaurant industry suffer. And I used to work in the restaurant for a long time, for about 5 years when I was in high school and college. I did not wait tables, but I was a dishwasher, and I would always talk to the wait staff. All the girls said the same thing. They're not really reporting their tips, or they might report some of it. That was the whole game. And if they couldn't do that, then they would go work somewhere else. They rather would be a CNA or something like that rather than a waitress at age 21 and 22. But I digress. Those 87,000 new IRS agents that you were promised would only target the rich, tweeted Mike Pollux, federal affairs manager at Americans for Tax Reform. They're coming after waitresses' tips. Exactly. According to the IRS, the program would seek to, quote, improve tip reporting compliance, unquote, reduce administrative burdens, and provide more transparency and certainty to taxpayers. It's BS. Like this article right here. This little link says former IRS whistleblower says government will target middle class on the Democrats' inflation bill. It's BS. Exactly. But hey, we're targeting the rich, right? If you make under $400,000 a year, you will not pay a penny in more taxes. Is that right? Well, if I won't pay a penny in more taxes, then why are you calling my restaurant talking about I'm not reporting enough tips and you want $1,000 to go towards your tax and spend plan that won't help me at all? All you're going to do is make more of a burden on me. Now I got to pay more taxes and things are going to cost more because you want to raise taxes on goods and services that I got to go out there and pay for. It didn't make any sense, but let's keep on going. Quote, this is not a proposal for the auditing of servers, unquote. Yeah, right. Exactly what it is, because that's the result. If somebody is not reporting enough tips, then what will be the consequence? They're going to get audited. Let's not play games here. Yesterday's action was a proposal for a comment, not a rule, based on over a decade of feedback from restaurants and other businesses seeking to increase flexibility for their overall tax compliance on tips. Tax compliance means that they are not trying to get locked up and they're trying to figure out the best way to adhere to your rules. If the rules weren't there to begin with, then it wouldn't even be a thing at all, right? Quote, this proposal is not in effect and is intended to welcome further conversation from all interested parties before any rules put into place. Well, now here's the key thing I want to get to. Among the program's features, the agency lists, quote, monitoring of employer compliance based on actual annual tip revenue and charge tip data from an employer's point of sale system and allowance for adjustments in tipping practices from year to year. Like I said, they're going to look at the average for a particular region, the zip code, a area, a state, a city, a town, township, whatever. And then they're going to compare what the average is to what you report. And if it's drastically lower, that's going to flag it. Now you're going to get audited. They can't enforce that any other way, because if you are reporting low, how are they going to be able to determine that you just are bad server or not getting tips for whatever the reason may be, or you're not just, not reporting? How can they tell which one is the case? They got to audit, they got to research, they got to investigate. And then if you're found to have been falsely reporting your tips or not reporting tips, then you got to pay. But again, the only way for them to determine how much and if you must pay is through an audit. It's very simple. It also states that participating employers would provide the IRS with annual reports, will receive protection from liability related to rules that define tips as part of an employee's pay. So basically, again, they're trying to comply with the law, not get locked up and not be hit with a tax bill and not be audited themselves. That's all that it is. It's not like they want to do this. The word voluntary is used very loosely here. But we continue, and we have the flexibility to implant internal tip reporting procedures in accordance with the section of the tax law that requires employees to report tips to their employers. Okay, so there's more here, but we already know what time it is. It's just a way for the federales to take more money from you, from the regular everyday taxpayer, not the big wigs that we were told they were going to target. But we already knew that. As I close, I want to say this. Why would they need to hire 87,000 new IRS agents to go after the rich? They're already taxed to the max. And it's only a handful of these guys. What more needs to be done? Guys like Donald Trump and everybody else already have an army of lawyers and accountants, and they work directly with the IRS. You cannot get the IRS on the phone. I bet Donald Trump can. I bet Elon Musk can. I bet Bill Gates can. Why? Because they got that big money. They want to hear from them individually. But you, on the other hand, hey, here's a bill. And if it's too much, hey, man, figure it out. Figure it out. We could just put a lien on your house or whatever, get the money that way. Like, we could do other things to get your money. And it's not really a big deal. We don't really care for more in your life. But these guys over here, oh, that's big money. We're going to dedicate everything we can to these guys. That is already in place. So what are we talking about? We're talking about coming after you, the average everyday citizen, just like myself. But I think I'll leave that right there for now. And what said you? How do you feel about this new plan from the federales, from the IRS? Is it a good thing, bad thing? Whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comments below. You guys know where I'm at. I'm not surprised here at all. This is what the IRS does. This is what the feds do. They're talking about we're taxing the rich. We're going to make things easier for you. All the while, they increase spending, never cut anything, waste a bunch of money, and they rob you barefaced in the process. It's really a shame. And I hope one day we can get beyond all this stuff, stop all the spending, stop all the inflationary stuff, and stop damaging the lives of the American people with this ridiculous tax and spend thing that we've been hooked on for a very long time. But whatever your thoughts are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.